Hi, this is Hot Chocolate with Paul, and today I'm going to talk about politics without talking about politics. Namely, how do I go about choosing who I want to vote for? And this is basically how I go about. First of all, just to give you a little bit of background, I do not belong to a political party. I have been in the past at times a Democrat, and I have been a Republican. But overall, I feel like I'm not being true to myself if I belong to a party, because I feel like I am an extremely independent person who thinks for himself and tries to keep other people's influences out of my thought process. So that's how it works. I don't like to take a label, but if I were to take a label, probably moderate would be the closest to how I would describe myself. I've had an interest in broadcast journalism and news for quite a long time, ever since my teen years. My biggest learning factor back in those days was when I got involved with WGMC radio, starting at the age of 14. And it was, at that time, a combination high school radio station, and we also had people from the community come in to do radio programs. While I was there, I discovered that there were some books about journalism that I had access to that I was able to borrow. So I took some out and I read those books. So starting from the age of 14, I had an interest in journalism and news, and I learned as much as I could. I had the opportunity to take an independent course in journalism when I was a senior in high school. So I learned what news is, what it should be, came to my own opinions about what it shouldn't be. And I believed in what we called the fairness doctrine, which was a law that was in place for a long time, where a broadcast station had to give equal time to the opposing point of view. If one person wanted 5 minutes to talk about something, they would have to give an opposing view, give 5 minutes to an opposing view as equal time. That was deregulated. I believe it was in 1979. I can't remember exactly when it was deregulated, but what that deregulation did was it allowed people to create radio shows, for example, where it was all one-sided. It could be all conservative. It could be all liberal. I'm not aware of any moderate radio shows, so I guess you need to appeal to one side or the other to get your advertising. And that's what journalism in the mass media has become these days. You're either conservative or you're liberal, and you are appealing to your advertising base. That's where the money comes from. Personally, I think it is a sad state of affairs, but that's where we're at. So when I do read or watch news or listen to news, I try to find news venues that are as moderate as they can possibly be. And I will reveal that the ones that I like are Reuters, AP, and anybody that I think fairly balances both sides of a story. You know, quite frankly, if you're watching CNN or MSNBC, it leans more to the liberal side. And of course, everybody knows that Fox leans more to the conservative side. I think it's sad that that opinion makers make more money than real journalists do. That's a sad state of affairs, but that's where we are. So I went to college. I went to State University of New York at Geneseo and got a degree in communications. I took some more news writing courses, journalism courses, as well as other courses related to communications, including radio and television. I ended up with a career in radio and television, I did a little bit of radio in my early years, and then I spent many, many years actually working in the control room at a TV station. Primarily, the reason I ended up in the control room was because at the time I got into it, I felt that that was the steadiest job for me. I was engaged to my first marriage at that time, and I wanted to make sure I had a steady income so that we could support and raise a family. But I always stayed interested in news. When I worked at the TV station, I followed a lot of what was going on in the newsroom at the time. I will say that a lot of local news, at least from what I've seen, tends to be more balanced. The local people are trying to appeal to their local communities, which is really what it should be. So, what's my opinion about politics? I hate politics. I follow politics just because I want to keep up with what's going on. I have my own very strong opinions about it, but that's not what this video is about. I'm not going to tell you what my strong opinions are in the political world. I'm going to tell you about the process that I used to get to those opinions. And in my opinion, I think this is what people need to do. Number one, don't listen to the politicians. Number two, don't listen to the politicians. Number three, don't listen to the politicians. Number four, don't listen to the politicians. And number five, don't listen to the politicians. What you should do is, once the politicians are put in place, whether they're nominated or they're naming themselves as running, whatever the process is, learn about them. If it's somebody that's been around for a long time, especially on the national scene, read their biographies. Where did they come from? How did they get to be where they are? What kind of things did they write about or talk about in the years leading up to where they are now? Learn their backgrounds. And I'm not talking about watching a video that somebody produces, say, for a national convention. I mean, that's basically an ad for them. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about doing some real research. Take a book out of the library, read a book online, learn who they are and where they came from, and make sure that the author of this biography is unbiased, or as unbiased as possible. That's where you start. Big thing. Learn from history. History repeats itself, whether you believe it or not, whether you're in denial. It does repeat itself. What happened in the past under similar circumstances, with a lot of accusations on both the Democrats and the Republicans in the past 15 to 20 years, each one calling the other the modern version of Hitler or something like that. Go back and read what happened in World War II. A book that I read back in the 1980s, I believe was written in the 1950s or the 60s. It's called The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by William L. Shirer. It's a very long book, but it is a very informative book. And some things that I've seen happen in there have been repeated since then. I'm going to come right out and say, I love democracy. I don't like any threats to democracy. An autocracy or a dictatorship or anything like that is the worst thing that could happen to our country or any country in the world. It's the same thing over and over and over again. Somebody gets, like a big, demanding loyalty is basically what it is. Getting all these people to get excited about one particular person. I know I'm hinting that you probably know what I'm talking about right now, but I'm basing it on history. It's happened over and over and over again. Okay, so I already said Hitler. Hitler happened, okay? Hitler happened for a reason. But we've also got North Korea and Russia to look at. We've got Cuba to look at, dictators of the world. It's the same thing over and over again. These people get themselves in a position of power for some reason. And, it's one thing they make promises that they're going to make everything better for the country. And then in the long run, it becomes all about themselves. They become obsessed with their power. They become fearful. They're afraid that somebody's going to do something to them. And then it's all about staying in power. They become obsessive about it. Read history. It happens over and over and over again. Documentaries, books. So once somebody's out there when they're campaigning, don't believe everything they said. In the age of the internet, what you got to look for is truthfulness. How much of the truth are they telling? There's people out there fact checking all the time. I know you're going to say some of them are leaning one way or the other, but there's plenty of fact checkers out there. There's some that are reasonably neutral. A lot of people don't seem to understand the difference between facts and opinion. Learn what the difference of facts and opinion are. A fact is something that can't be changed. I'm sitting in a chair right now. It's a fact that can't be changed. I can get up, then I'm not sitting in a chair. That's another fact that can't be changed. This chair is extremely comfortable. That's my opinion. That's an opinion that can be changed. I could have a guest come in here and sit in the chair and say, "Ooh, I hate this chair. It's really uncomfortable." That's an opinion. It's not a fact. Learn the difference. So things I look for in a candidate, like I said, truthfulness. Fact check them. What are they saying? Is it truthful? Is it real fact? Or is it that they're passing their opinion on as a fact? Experience. How much experience has this person had? What kind of things that they do that are similar? If they want a national position, have they had enough experience to know what's going on there? Have they studied history? Do they know what history is all about? Everybody's going to have an ego. Anybody running for office is going to have an ego, but how much of a degree of being humble do they show? Are they humble in any sort of fashion? Do they have empathy? Do they understand other people? Do they demand loyalty? If anybody demands loyalty, it's an immediate no from me. Anybody, I don't care who they are. Do they listen to opposing views? Is it somebody that wants everybody to repeat what they say verbatim? Do they want somebody to repeat their opinions as facts? Those are people I don't like. I want people that are going to listen to different opinions about how they should take these opinions, weigh the pros and cons to come up with whatever policy should be made. A great example that I once heard, John F. Kennedy during the Cuban Missile Crisis. As I understand it, he had a round table. He went around the table. He listened to every person's view about how the Cuban Missile Crisis should be resolved. He listened to every one of them. He didn't argue with any of them. He took all of their opinions, and in the end, he made a decision about what course of action that he should take regarding the Cuban Missile Crisis. And that's the way I think it needs to be handled. How well does a candidate listen to other people? So, I guess to kind of sum it up, how do I choose a candidate? I base things on my own understanding of history. I love history. I've read a lot of it. I've watched a lot of biographies. I've watched a lot of historical documentaries. I read books that are biographies. How did this person come to be who they are? What shaped their opinions and views, and what course of action do they take to form policy? Are they surrounded by yes men? I don't want yes men, not at all. Again, experience. I used to believe that having military experience was very important in a president of the United States. I've let that one slide, because after all, they are the commander in chief. I've kind of let that one slide because I think there's a lot of other factors that can make a very good president, for example. Again, do they show a degree of being humble? Do they demand loyalty? Because if they do, I don't want them. And do they listen to opposing views? So that's how I go about forming my opinion. So I've hoped you've learned something from my view on how to choose a candidate. But whatever the case is, make sure you go out and vote. So that's all I have for today. I'm Paul Pakish, and this has been Hot Chocolate with Paul. I'll see you on Saturday.